9 years, no calls, no messages, not even a whisper of concern. And then, on a gray, rainy morning in Seattle, with my hands deep in wet concrete at the market, they called, not to apologize, but to ask for help. My name is Camille Harris, the one my wealthy family erased because I refused to inherit the empire they built on appearances and lies. But here's the thing, walking away from everything, that's when I found everything. Before I share the full story, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe, especially if you've ever had to stand up for yourself. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened after I slammed that door shut and started planting a whole new garden of my own. I was elbow deep in wet concrete, smoothing the base of what would become a living sculpture in Pike Place Market, when my phone buzzed. The number had a 404 area code, Atlanta. My stomach dropped before I even answered. Camille? The voice was tentative, familiar, yet strange. It's Devin, your cousin. I hadn't heard that voice in 9 years. My hands trembled as I wiped them on my jeans, leaving gray streaks I'd regret later. Around me, Seattle's November drizzle created a curtain between me and the world, and suddenly I was grateful for it. Grandma's turning 80 next month, Devin continued, filling the silence I couldn't break. She wants you there. We all do. We all do. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had burned out long ago. I thought about the last time anyone from the Harris family had wanted me anywhere. It was the day before I'd packed my Honda Civic with everything I owned and driven 12,800 miles to Oregon, leaving behind the family real estate empire they'd groomed me to inherit. I'll think about it, I heard myself say, though my mind was already made. I'd go. Not for them, but to finally close a door I'd left cracked open all these years, bleeding hope into the void. Growing up a Harris meant growing up in a glass house where everyone could see you, but no one really looked. Our Buckhead mansion had 14 rooms, and I'd found a way to be invisible in every single one of them. While my cousins collected tennis trophies and debate medals, I collected fallen leaves and arranged them into patterns on the back patio. Mom would sweep them away before guests arrived, her smile tight as she'd remind me that Harris women don't play in dirt. But I wasn't playing, I was creating worlds. Dad ran the family business like a general commanding troops. Every dinner was a board meeting where we discussed market trends and property values. I'd sit there, pushing peas around my plate, designing gardens in the condensation on my water glass, while he mapped out my future. Business school at Emory, an MBA from Wharton, then a corner office at Harris Holdings. The day I found Dad with his secretary in his office, her lipstick smeared, his wedding ring on the desk, was the day I understood that the Harris family wasn't built on love. It was built on appearances. Mom knew. She'd always known. But she stayed, smile perfect, because that's what Harris women did. I applied to art school that night, using the college fund they'd saved for my business degree. It felt like stealing, but maybe I was just taking back what was already mine, the right to choose my own life. Portland in January was nothing like Atlanta. The cold bit through my thrift store coat as I hauled boxes up 3 flights to a studio apartment that smelled like old cigarettes and hope. I had $3,000 in savings and no backup plan. Those first months I worked 4 jobs: coffee shop at dawn, art store at noon, restaurant at night, and nude modeling for figure drawing classes on weekends. My hands were constantly stained. Espresso grounds, acrylic paint, dishwater, charcoal. I'd fall asleep on the bus between jobs, dreaming in colors my family would never understand. Then I met Samira. She walked into the community sculpture class I could barely afford, her head wrapped in brilliant fabric, her laugh filling the room like music. She was everything I wasn't: confident, established, unapologetic about taking up space. "Your work," she said, studying my piece made from salvaged driftwood and recycled copper, "it's trying to grow, but you're still pruning it to fit someone else's garden." She became my mentor, then my friend. Under her guidance, I stopped making art that apologized for existing. When my first public installation was selected for Pioneer Courthouse Square, I called home to share the news. The phone rang and rang. They'd changed the number. That's when I started Wildform Studio, alone in a converted garage, building gardens that healed spaces the way I wished someone had healed me. The Mercer Island property was a disaster when I found it. 5 acres of blackberry vines and broken dreams. But I saw what it could become. Jonas saw it too. He'd been hired to assess the damaged trees, this quiet German engineer who spoke to plants like they were old friends. We worked side by side for weeks, clearing land, discovering the bones of an old garden beneath the chaos. When he kissed me among the newly freed rhododendrons, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. We built our life slowly, deliberately. The main house became our sanctuary, the old barn transformed into my studio. But the real magic happened in the gardens, each section a different story, a different healing. Our dinner parties started small. Samira would bring her wife and homemade injera. Leo and Marcus from down the road would arrive with their adopted daughter and vegetables from their garden. June, the chef who'd hired me at that first restaurant job, would cook feasts that made our mismatched plates sing. I posted photos of our gatherings online, not thinking much of it. But people responded to something in those images, the joy, maybe, or the way light filtered through the greenhouse where we ate. Soon, I was designing healing gardens for hospitals, creating spaces where people could find what I'd found, the peace that comes from growing something beautiful from broken ground. The Harrises never commented on those posts, but I knew they watched. The view counts from Atlanta were too consistent to be coincidence. Grandma's birthday party was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like I'd remembered. The Buckhead Country Club sparkled with old money and new Botox. I'd worn my best dress, a vintage find from Seattle, and still felt like I'd shown up in gardening clothes. "Camille!" Voices called out, faces I half recognized approaching with air kisses and calculating eyes. "We heard you're doing landscaping now?" Not landscaping, land art. Healing spaces, but I just smiled and nodded, sipping champagne that tasted like disappointment. Dad looked older, his hair silver now, his smile the same corporate weapon it had always been. Mom stood beside him in St. John knit, playing the perfect wife like she was born to it. Maybe she was. "You look well," she said, her eyes taking inventory of my success or failure. I couldn't tell which she hoped to find. Then Grandma made her entrance, regal at 80. Her eyes finding mine across the room. For a moment, I saw something flicker there. Regret? Curiosity? Before the Harris mask slipped back into place. After the toasts and cake, after the stories that carefully edited out my existence, Dad and Uncle Richard cornered me by the coat check. "We have a proposition," Uncle Richard said, and I knew my invitation hadn't been about missing me at all. The private dining room smelled like cigars and old secrets. They'd prepared a presentation. Of course they had. Slides showing a resort development in the Carolinas. Prime mountain property ready to be transformed into sustainable luxury. "Your ecological expertise would be invaluable," Dad said, like we were strangers making a deal. Maybe we were. The Harris name combined with your alternative approach could open new markets. I let them finish, watched them perform their practiced pitch. Then I stood. "You haven't called me in 9 years," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Not when my studio won the Pacific Design Award. Not when the Times featured my work. Not even when I almost died in that car accident 3 years ago. Oh wait, you didn't know about that, did you?" Mom's face went pale. Dad's jaw tightened. "But now you need me. Now I'm useful." "You abandoned this family." Grandma's voice cut through the room like winter. "You threw away everything we built for some hippie fantasy." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. I refused to pretend that love came with terms and conditions. I refused to be a Harris woman who smiled while her heart broke. I chose to build something real instead of inheriting something hollow. The silence stretched until it snapped. I picked up my purse, didn't look back. "If you walk out that door," Grandma called out, "don't expect—" "I don't," I interrupted. "I haven't expected anything from you in years. That's what makes me free." The knock came at 6 a.m. the following Saturday. I opened the door in my ratty university sweatshirt, coffee mug in hand, to find Devin on my porch. He'd flown to Seattle without warning, standing there in his pressed khakis looking utterly lost. "Can I come in?" he asked, and suddenly he wasn't the golden boy cousin anymore. He was just tired. We sat in my kitchen as morning light filled the space. Jonas made eggs while Devin talked, really talked, for the first time in our lives. "I envied you," he admitted. "Leaving. Building this." He gestured at the gardens visible through every window. "I've been playing Harris and Harris III my whole life, and I don't even know who I am underneath." He wanted to invest in my healing garden project, not for the family, not for appearances, for himself. He pulled out plans he'd drawn up, ideas for making therapeutic gardens accessible to communities that needed them most. I studied my cousin, this stranger who shared my blood, and made a choice. Okay, but we do this my way. Real partnership, legal contracts, no Harris Holdings involvement. He nodded, relief flooding his face. When his girlfriend Sarah arrived the next day, an environmental lawyer with a laugh that filled rooms, I understood why he was finally ready to stop pretending. The first annual Artists and Gardens gathering happened almost by accident. It was supposed to be a simple dinner party, but word spread. By evening, our property hosted 40 people. Artists, gardeners, dreamers, builders of beautiful things. I sent an invitation to Atlanta 2 weeks before, a simple card with a photo of our table set among the flowers. Family dinner is at Camille's garden this year. Come with an open heart or don't come at all. The day arrived gray and perfect, Seattle showing off its moody beauty. Sarah helped me string lights while Devin and Jonas hauled tables. Samira's team from the art collective arrived with handmade ceramics. June orchestrated magic in our outdoor kitchen. Marcus and Leo's daughter picked flowers for centerpieces, arranging them with the focus of a future artist. As sunset painted the gardens gold, I stood in the heart of what we'd built. No one from Atlanta came. The absence hurt less than I'd expected, like touching a scar that had finally healed. They didn't come, Jonas said softly, wrapping his arms around me from behind. No, I agreed, watching our chosen family laugh and share and belong. But everyone who matters is here. Later, as I taught neighborhood kids to plant seedlings in our greenhouse, dirty hands and delighted faces surrounding me, I found myself saying words I finally believed. This is my family. Not because we share blood, but because we choose to share our lives. Because when I was just a seed that didn't match the garden, they gave me room to grow wild. The evening ended with all of us around the fire, sharing stories and wine, planning next year's gathering. Devin and Sarah stayed late, helping clean up, earning their place in our chosen tribe through small acts of care. As the last guests left, I walked through my gardens one more time. Every plant here had been chosen, nurtured, allowed to grow in its own way, just like the family I'd built from scratch. Sometimes the best gardens aren't the ones you inherit. They're the ones you plant yourself, with hands dirty from honest work and a heart brave enough to bloom where it chooses. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown Atlanta number. I deleted it without reading. Tomorrow there would be new gardens to design, new spaces to heal. Tonight, there was just peace, and the family I'd grown from seeds of my own choosing. In the distance, Seattle's lights twinkled like stars I'd wished on and caught. I was home. Finally, truly home.